Hi everyone, Dani here, and welcome to Spenelli Speaks and another Sunday night summary with Edward Rutherfurd's London. Now, this is the second to last chapter of our enormous tome, so we are almost done. And if you're anything like me, you read the last chapter as well because it was tiny. So you may also be done with this book, which is extremely exciting. We do have one more Sunday left, as we will finish with that last chapter next week, Sunday, so make sure you're tuned in for that. And the Sunday thereafter, which is Sunday, November 30th, we will do a live stream. So if you'd like to chat about the book with me live, that is going to be November 30th at 8 p.m. So Sunday evening at 8 p.m. If you've missed any of the chapter summaries or you want to refresh yourself before the live stream, check out the description. I have a full playlist there. You can check out any of those. Or if you're seeing this far after the fact, please feel free to jump into that playlist and enjoy any of the chapters from our book. If you haven't already, I hope you take some time and hit that subscribe button as well as the notification bell, as I do have some upcoming Rutherfurd plans. So you'll want to make sure you are tuned in for that. Very exciting. So today's chapter is chapter 20, and that is titled The Blitz. Now, this chapter is short. It's only about 30 pages, but there's a lot packed into it, and it's kind of sectioned into three sections: morning, afternoon, and evening. So we see three parts of one day. Now, with the title being The Blitz, you can imagine this is during Hitler's blitzkrieg on London and the surrounding European areas, of course. Now, this is 1940, so it's about 30 years after the last chapter. We do have a couple of recurring characters, and we'll kind of go through those together here. But let's kind of talk about through those sections. So in the morning, we meet our first character, and that is Charlie Doggett. And from the description, we find out that he's a pretty lucky fellow, not only in his ability to stay safe in a very rough job. He works for the fire brigade, so it's very dangerous. He's combating fires from the Blitz, but just in like things that happen to him in his life. So it's very interesting. He's a very lucky guy, and he is the nephew of Jenny Doggett, if you remember from the previous chapter, who then became Fleming. So Jenny Fleming, who is married to Percy Fleming, who we see later on in the chapter as well. So we learn that basically everyone in the chapter has taken on some kind of role in the safety of the people of London. So Charlie is part of the fire brigade. And later in the chapter, during the afternoon, we meet Helen, who is the daughter of Violet. If you remember Violet from the suffragette chapter, Helen is in her 30s somewhere. If you recall, she was 6 when we last knew her. She is an ambulance driver. So we see how she kind of conducts herself through the chapter. She and her mother kind of have premonitions, I guess, or bad feelings, and they both have a bad feeling that afternoon that something terrible may happen that day. So you're kind of getting a little bit of foreshadowing. In the afternoon, we also meet again Percy and Herbert Fleming. So those are the brothers from the previous chapter, and they were actually in Crystal Palace and then leaned over into this chapter. And they are in their 60s, but they are volunteering or helping out with the local fire brigade as well. And so we see how their contributions help. They're not necessarily always going out because they are a little bit older, but they're helping there at the station with food and entertainment. So we get to know them a little bit more in their older age. In the evening, this is when we see everybody kind of come out of the woodwork because this is when everything really counts. As far as the Blitz go, this was an aerial assault at night. So if you've ever read any historical information, nonfiction or fiction, you know that people were hiding in shelters. They utilized the underground for sheltering. And a lot of people, like the people we mentioned so far, were all hands on deck, essentially. So we see Charlie is out with the fire brigade putting out fires from a lot of the bombing. Helen is driving around in an ambulance helping people who have been affected by the bombing. We, for the first time, meet Neville Silversleeves in the chapter, and we don't get a lot from him, but we get an understanding that he is kind of a sleazy guy, and he's just basically making sure that people aren't out after curfew, because with the blackouts were essentially at night, they kind of turned down all the electricity so that the planes couldn't really see where they may be bombing, to kind of help with saving some of London, essentially. So he is part of the people who were like basically saying if you were like out after curfew, you're going to get in trouble. So you just get a feel that he's not the best guy. We also meet a Admiral Sir William Barnacle, who's just all brute and Viking and just the big guy, and he's just very bombastic, and he is basically in charge of like checking in on most of the fire brigades, and he really pipes up Percy Fleming, and he just kind of appears in most of the chapter. As far as any other people go, we get a little bit of a glimpse of Violet Meredith, so that's Helen's mom. We get a little bit of a glimpse of Maisie, who is Herbert's wife. And then I believe that's pretty much it as far as characters go. Like I said, it was a short chapter, and we're really just seeing how they, like, what they do for London during the chapter. There are fatalities. We won't go into whom. I'll save that for you. And if you're watching this and you really don't want a spoiler, I would suggest that you pause here and come back after you've read the chapter. I'll give you a minute. Okay, so if you're here, you're still here, here's a huge to-do. Charlie Doggett finds the gold. Oh my goodness, we have been waiting for this for so long. So obviously you can imagine London is being bombed left and right here. We're losing age-old buildings. We're getting bombs that are really going far into the ground, and Charlie's out there with the best of them, putting out fires and whatnot, and he is on the ground, and he comes upon this crater essentially, and he jumps in to protect himself from a different like landmine that's falling from like a little parachute, and he sees like a little glimmer. And as soon as you read this as a reader, you're like, oh my gosh, it's the gold. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. I had to reread it like 3 times because I didn't want to miss a bit of it. But essentially, yes, Charlie finds the gold. And the bad thing is while he's in the crater and he's pushing this gold in his boots and he's trying to collect as much gold as he can, another bomb drops. But it doesn't go off, and it drops right on top of the gold. So you're very, it's very scary moment. You're like, oh my gosh, is he gonna have found the gold and then blow up? And what happens? But Silversleeves shows up. Oh my goodness, Silversleeves. Why does he always have to be in the most annoying moments? You just want Charlie to get away with it. But certain things happen. Barnacle shows up, and it's all good. It's all good. The bomb does go off though. So let's just keep that very clear. So Charlie doesn't get all of the gold, but he does get a nice little box worth, and that's all we hear of it. He passes it along to his son, and that's the end of that. I feel like, as someone who has been waiting to find the gold as a reader, it was a really amazing moment, but it was a little lackluster. I felt like it was a little lackluster. And if you recall, the original family that um, found the gold in the first place was the Duckett family. And now this is Charlie Doggett. However, if you recall earlier in one of the chapters, the boys were swapped. So it's actually a Duckett who furthered down the Doggett line. So technically, it has always been a Duckett that was linked to this gold. So very, very fun to have that come to completion. And it was just really exciting that it was the same family line that found it. And thankfully so that Silver Sleeves was unable to like thwart that plan, because that dang Silver Sleeves. So that's what we have there, and it was very exciting. I'm sure if you yourself as a reader have been waiting for the gold to be found, I hope that that was a good moment for you. Like I said, for me it was great, and then it just happened so fast, and I was just like, wow, okay. Yeah, okay. So this is it. So anyways, yes, a very short chapter, but it kind of gives you a nice idea of like life then, and how life kind of stopped as far as like your norms, and it really just went into survival mode, and how people had to, you know, get through daily life with every night being assaulted by the German enemy. So it puts things into perspective as far as history goes. And I'm glad that it wasn't like a drawn out chapter. I like that it was within the span of one day, because it really gave you a very concise feeling of daily life. So I liked that. I liked that chapter. This is probably one of my favorite chapters, probably because the gold is found. But other than that, I did like that it wasn't drawn out, and it really just gave you a good idea of what these characters had to go through, and characters also aligning with, you know, true life, true people. There was like a few things mentioned that were happening around the same time, or at least happening within these characters' timelines, because they mentioned like remembering them, or like how they understanding how those events brought them to where they are today. So we have the mention of Tsar Nicholas's family being murdered during the Russian Revolution. We get mention of the term flapper, you know, referring to young girls during the 20s. And then we do also, through Violet's, you know, what happened to her during her life, they mention that women earned the right to vote in 1917, but then also following that with the influenza outbreak in 1918. So we get a lot of like little chunks of history throughout the chapter that kind of coincide with like how we got to where we are with Germany, you know, invading. So it was a really good chapter as far as like being very character driven, but also having a lot of historical information. So, and with this being so close to a lot of what we learned in history, because it is very close in timeline. I mean, we're coming up to almost 100 years, you know, 20 years from now, it'll be 100 years since World War II. And that's insane, because when I learned about World War II, it was not that far off. So, yeah, that's to sit and age me, but yes. So we have that. Anywho, that is the end of chapter 20. Like I said, next week the chapter is extremely brief. So as I'm sure most of you have probably finished it, I'm excited to get it finished here on our summaries, and I'm excited to chat with you on the 30th. So let me know if there's anything in specific. You can certainly DM me or comment below. And I look forward to chatting with you. But until then, I hope you're reading something fantastic, taking care, staying safe. And as always, you know how it goes. Happy reading. Bye.